Morning. It's cold in the shop this morning. I was reading 25 below this morning. Coldest we've had this year. So we have the heat going, but it's still cool in here. Anyway, I'm going to be working on Cannister Damascus. I got 1.5-inch square tube here. A couple end caps. I'm going to weld one on. Fill this thing with some whiteout after I clean it up. And then fill it with the media. I'm using ball bearings, fish hooks, and 1090 powder. And I'll show you all the steps I do for this. I don't have a power hammer or anything. Everything I do is by hand and hammer. So it should be interesting. I got one end welded on here. I'm not a good welder, as you can see, but my welds do hold. So now I'm going to clean out this tube, and I'll coat it with whiteout, and then we'll start stuffing our material down in there. Alright, here we go. I'm using Papermate liquid paper. This stuff seems to work well for me. There we go. It's fully coated inside there now, so let that dry. Okay, got my can all dried with the whiteout. I've got 1/2 inch and 1/4 inch ball bearings here, all cleaned, and a bunch of fish hooks and some 1090 powder. I'm going to layer all these in the can, tap them down, make it nice and tight, and then we'll weld the other end cap on. So we got everything packed into the canister, got the end cap welded on, and if you notice I got a little nub on here, kind of like a work stick. The reason I don't put a full work stick on this thing is because I'm doing it by hand with a hammer, so it's got to be in the heat a lot longer and a lot more cycles than it would if you had a press, and it ends up heating up the work stick too much that you can't hold on to it. So I just put a little nub on here, big enough that I can grab it with my box tongs, and I got something to work with. So the plan is to put this into the forge. We'll get it up to bright yellow heat and then let it soak for a little bit. Bring it out and light taps, quick taps, overlapping hammer strikes on all 4 sides fast, and it goes back into the forge. And we'll repeat this 6, 8 times, whatever it takes, till I can start feeling the media inside getting solid. It takes a little longer, like I said, than if you had a press, but the end result is very satisfying. So let's get to it. The forge I'm using is a dual burner mighty knife from Mighty Forge Canada. I love this forge. This thing gets up to heat real fast. It can forge weld perfect, no problem. 2 doors either side, and I still only run a 20-pound tank, so I put it in a tote of lukewarm water, about 1/4 of the way full. That stops any freeze up from happening. So let's go ahead and fire this up. Another thing I love about this forge, it's got a self-igniter on it. You don't have to put a match or burning tissue inside. There we go. And I'm going to run this about 20 psi for the forge weld, just to make sure it stays hot enough inside. Taps right now, trying to set the welds inside that can. It's a little steamy. Right on. Put that heat up again and repeat the same process. Probably half a dozen times at least. Getting a little bit harder each time. Should be good. Okay, so I'm finished pounding out this billet. I've got it now in the vise. I'm going to cut the ends off, cut a seam down each side, then drop it on the floor. Hopefully the can pops right off. And inside we got a solid billet. I actually did 12 heats in and out of the forge, setting the welds 12 times, and it feels solid inside. So let's cut her open and see what we got. Oh, this is what I like to see when I cut the end off. Have a look at that. Nice and solid there. I'm going to cut the other end off now. That'll cut the seams. And I'll see you back here in a minute with a solid billet. So there we go. I popped the can off. And looks like I've got a completely solid billet. Got one little crack right there. Whoop. But it's just on the surface. Right there. Everything else looks good. So I'll get to pounding this out and figure out what kind of knife we're going to make. Okay, so I'm going to pound this out. To recap, it was 1/2 inch and 1/4 inch ball bearings, small fish hooks, about 600 of them, little tiny ones, and 1090 powder. I did 12 heat cycles to set the welds inside the canister. It is, I'd say, about 10 inches long. I never did measure that. Let's see. Yeah, so the billet is 10 inches by 1.5 inches. It's got one tiny little crack on the edge here, but I don't think that goes in anywhere, but everything else looks fine. So I hope this helped somebody. You can do it without power hammer and without press. It just takes a little bit longer. And my arm's a little bit tired now. Till next time, see you guys.